Hello everyone and welcome to another Stargate lore video. Today we're going to be talking about Sokar.
His portion of Tuat, or the other world, was filled with lakes of fire where the wicked were thrown into as punishment after torture and mutilation.
Hell.
Yeah, basically he was the original Satan.
History. Sokar is a very old Gou'ald. However, like most things in Stargate, we don't really know much about his history. We know he was around when the Gou'ald first arrived on Earth. However, unlike the other Gou'ald who fashioned themselves after various gods, Sokar decided to take a different approach. He took on the persona of various evil deities like gods of death or literally the devil. Now, we do come into a bit of a lore conflict here. In the show, it's stated that Sokar once ruled over the System Lords, and later in lines of several System Lords, including Ra, Apophis, and Cronus, had overthrown him. In the System Lords rulebook, we get a bit more details on what happened. During the Second Gou'ald Dynasty, Anubis had resurfaced and attacked the Empire. While Ra was distracted dealing with Anubis, Sokar had taken the opportunity to take Ra's seat of power on Earth and at least control the areas around Memphis. When Ra was done with dealing with Anubis, he turned around and formed an alliance with various System Lords, including Apophis and Cronus, and overthrew him. As to which you want to count as canon is really up to you. Personally, I think both can coexist, as there's no major details in conflict with one another, and I think it actually fixes some details. Since we know Ra was the first Gou'ald on Earth and was the first/only Supreme System Lord, having Sokar also be ruler of the System Lords on Earth does create a bit of a lore conflict. So I think adding in the detail that Sokar had taken Ra's seat of power while Ra was busy dealing with another threat, I think it kind of fixes up the timeline and makes sense when you consider how the Gou'ald function. Regardless of which story you want to count as canon, during Sokar's rule of the lands around Memphis, they were covered in darkness and inhabited by serpents. The darkness possibly being caused by a device called a sunshade, and the serpents being Unas he let roam free. After his defeat, he was assumed dead, but he survived, although severely weakened. He would later go on to conquer the planet Delmak and terraform its moon, Netu, into a hellish world to be used as a prison. Travel between the moon and the planet was done via marine transport, which we know Sokar's Underlord Bainar would use to inform Sokar of the suffering of the damned. The next time he pops up is in 1999 when he begins to make his presence known again in the galaxy, possibly doing so now, feeling the Empire had been weakened due to the death of Ra and Apophis weakening in power. He started off by attacking and capturing Apophis, as well as entering into a war with the System Lord Henrurur. I cannot say this guy's name for the life of me, I don't know why. Apophis would manage to escape and make his way to the Tari for sanctuary, / to take them down with him in the event that he died. Sokar attempted to get through Earth's iris with a particle accelerator, but thankfully he never got the chance to get through, and after Apophis died, Stargate Command managed to send the body back to Sokar, who seemed willing to take it and leave. However, SG-1 would learn that with a sarcophagus, Apophis could be resurrected and tortured for as long as Sokar wants. During this period of time, SG-1 would have multiple encounters of Sokar's influence throughout the galaxy. To a bounty hunter working on a bounty Sokar had placed on a Tok'ra, to a Gou'ald using Unas as a host to terrorize a planet in Sokar's name. Within a year of his return, Sokar planned to launch a full attack on all the System Lords. The Tok'ra sent Jacob Carter and Selmak to discover the exact numbers of the invasion. However, he was captured, and SG-1 with Martooth were sent to Netu to rescue him. In the most badass way, of course. Here they learned Sokar had a force 10 times as originally thought and was going to attack within 2 weeks. Sokar's Underlord Bainar had informed Sokar he was grateful for being sent Jolinar's host, Sam in this case, as Jolinar had been the only one to ever escape the moon, and he was happy for a chance at revenge. Sokar realized these people were intruders and ordered them to be tortured to gather information and to find their ship. Teal'c managed to escape, and Sokar decided to move up his attack plan to 2 days. The Tok'ra decide to use the fact that Sokar would enter Netu's orbit to cleanse the moon of its inhabitants to destroy Sokar. They plan to send a weapon into Netu's core to destabilize it and cause the moon to explode. During this time, Apophis, who had been made first prime to Bainar since his capture and torture, launched a rebellion and took control of the moon. He tortured SG-1 to gather any information he could to barter with Sokar to spare his life and make him the new Lord of Netu. He learned that the Tok'ra were based on the planet Entak, and he transported via ring to Sokar's ship to give him this information. But in reality, he had planned to kill Sokar. He met with Sokar and gave him the information. However, Sokar had already conquered Entak and knew there were no Tok'ra there, so he ordered Apophis to be tortured to death.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
While enjoying Apophis' pain, Sokar was alerted that Netu was going to explode. Taking advantage of the distraction, Apophis killed the Jaffa and tried to kill Sokar. But Sokar had a personal shield which saved his life. However, Apophis managed to escape, and when Netu exploded, Sokar was killed when his ship was caught in the blast. Personality. So, remember when Teal'c and Ball were having that conversation about the Gou'ald, and Ball says this?
Come now, Teal'c. We're smart enough to know we're not actually gods. Well, some of us are anyway. There are always those who'll begin to believe their own propaganda.
Yeah, Sokar may have been one of those Gou'ald. Besides the usual arrogance and egotism that came with most Gou'ald, Sokar was notorious for his sadistic tendencies. Unlike other Gou'ald, he never really cared if his followers worshipped him like a god. He preferred that they feared him, and in turn those who lived under his rule were more oppressed compared to other Gou'ald subjects, living in constant fear that Sokar would have them killed or worse, tortured. And he really enjoyed torturing people, sometimes in front of him. Needless to say, he really wanted to live up to his devil persona. For example, he would often terraform worlds under his control to be more hellish in nature, with, lava flowing everywhere, as he did with Netu. Even his appearance might be a result of him trying to make himself look more evil, although that's more speculation on my part. He also had this thing where he kept a lit flame around and waved his hand around it, almost like how a villain would pet a cat. And now I just have this image in my head of Sokar keeping this candle around to use as like his version of a pet rock. Sokar's domain. Sokar's domain was unique as it was not officially part of the Gou'ald Empire, as he was cast out long ago. Technically speaking, he was a rogue Gou'ald. As such, his domain had a lot of unique quirks to it. For one, his Jaffa, called the Necropolis Guard, wore red armor with their helmets having horns on them to further his whole demonic thing. Sokar also had Gou'ald in his service that still used Unuses as host, and was possibly the only one to do so in the modern age. Again, to push his whole demon angle. However, tactically speaking, I can definitely see the advantages of having both races be present as a host, especially if you're doing more manual or battle-like tactics. After all, humans aren't really built for individual fighting, but Unuses appear to be. When it comes to his technology, while we do know he had stuff like the particle accelerator, which was not used by many other system lords, he doesn't seem to have a massive technological edge over others. He very much relies heavily on his military. And finally, Sokar was heavily militaristic, even compared to the other system lords. His entire domain ran on providing aid to his military, and he preferred to dominate with his army versus any other tactic. And that was Sokar, and I like him, but I do have a problem with him. I don't think he was very well utilized. I mean, you have one of the evilest Gou'ald in the show, choosing the persona of the devil himself. He looks like some kind of monster and enjoys watching people suffer. He has a very large military, and his Jaffa wear red armor that makes them look evil, but also makes him look distinctive than the silver and gray worn by literally every other Jaffa in the galaxy. He's threatening to take control of the entire galaxy, and he's only around for 2 seasons, appearing on screen like 3 times. That just feels like a waste, doesn't it? The first major threat to the galaxy, not just Earth, the galaxy. And he's gone within 2 seasons and replaced with the same old enemy. Don't get me wrong, I like Apophis, but why introduce Sokar at all then? My best guess is that when this all first came out on television, people didn't like Sokar and wanted Apophis back, but I can't really confirm that since I wasn't there, and it's only really a theory based on how I've seen people react to things in modern media. Regardless, I think Sokar was a wasted opportunity as a villain. He's almost kind of like a proto-version of Anubis if you really think about it. Both have similar backstories in that they were exiled from the Empire only to return later stronger. Both are very visually distinctive than the other system lords, and they're both played by the same actor. Maybe that was the idea behind the creation of Anubis, maybe a redo for Sokar since they didn't really get to do anything with him. But what do you all think? Do you agree with me that Sokar was wasted potential? Or do you think he was used just enough? Or do you hate him and confirm my theory that he wasn't really liked in the beginning at all? Leave a comment and maybe leave a like and subscribe. And remember,
you don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't. But I've considered it.